So I am going to go over the instructions for activity 9. Let me just pull it up and see what we're doing. So what you guys will be doing is you will be calculating Pearson's R, so calculating correlation with these different pairs of variables. Then you'll tell me which has the strongest correlation between them. Then you'll be getting into doing some linear regression equations and finally interpreting some linear regression null hypothesis testing. The linear regression PowerPoint will tell you everything you'll need to know for how to interpret these findings. So just refer to that. And I will be showing you how to calculate Pearson's R using Excel, as well as conducting this linear regression analysis. Well, finding the linear regression equation using Excel as well. So first, let's start with the finding Pearson's R. So we have our Excel sheet for the 9th activity, and this is what it looks like. So there are a couple things that we'll need to do before we start getting over here to calculating Pearson's R with our variables. So just so we have some context for what we're looking at, you'll see we have participant, gender, and age. Okay. But then you'll see these SE 1 through 5, I 1 through 5, SS 1 through 5, and ICSR 1 through 5. Now, these are abbreviations for questions that these participants have been asked. So the SE 1 through 5 stands for self-esteem 1 through 5, and these are the 5 self-esteem statements that participants were asked to respond to. And then I 1 through 5 is for impulsiveness. SS 1 through 5 is for the 5 questions on sensation seeking. And finally, ICSR is a measure of resilience. So I'm going to be referring to the ICSR as resilience because ICSR is a hell of a mouthful to say repeatedly. So just so now we have a little bit of context of what we're looking at, let's get into starting to calculate Pearson's R. So we see that we're going to be looking at we're going to be calculating the correlation between self-esteem and impulsiveness, self-esteem and sensation seeking, self-esteem and that resilience, impulsiveness and sensation seeking, impulsiveness and resilience, and finally sensation seeking and resilience. Whew. So you'll also see that I have these 4 columns added here, referred to as the composite scores. We will need to compute these before we do anything with Pearson's R. So what is a composite score? Well, a composite score is essentially summarizing the variables that the participants have been asked. So each of the variables, self-esteem, impulsiveness, sensation seeking, and resilience, have 5 questions each. However, we want to change those 5 questions into one statement, one value that represents their overall score in each of those variables. And those are known as composite scores. And the way that I'm going to be calculating the composite score is finding the average of each participant's self-esteem score, and that will be their composite. So we'll start with equals average, and we're going to skiddly-do on down to our self-esteem questions. So 1 through 5, perfect. Only doing for that first row. Oh, okay. Thank you, Excel, for that. Didn't mean to do that. Let me just do that over again. So self-esteem 1 through 5, hit enter. So this first participant, this 21-year-old woman, her self-esteem composite score is 3.8. So we're going to want to do that for all of our participants, and there's an easy way to do that in Excel without having to do equals average over and over and over again, and that's to use this fill handle. So we're going to hover our cursor over to that green square at the bottom right of our selected cell, and just click it and drag it all the way down. And thank you very much, Excel, for giving us all of the composite scores. I'll be doing the same for all of the variables. So we have equals our impulsiveness. So we're going to go over to I 1 through 5, enter, click the cell, fill handle all the way down. And finally, we'll do the same for the sensation seeking equals average, sensation seeking 1 through 5, enter, click it, drag it, done it. And then again, we'll finish off this with doing this for the resilience questions as well. So 1 through 5, enter, click it, drag it, done it. Okay, so these questions, these composite, no, that's not what we want to do. These composite scores that we've just created, these are the values that we're going to be using to calculate Pearson's R using Excel. So instead of having, we want to see the overall self-esteem score, which is these values here. Again, we just found the average of the 5 questions asked on self-esteem, found the average of the 5 questions asked for impulsiveness, sensation seeking, and resilience. So it's those overall averages that we are going to be calculating Pearson's R for. So there's an easy function for calculating Pearson's R in Excel, and it's just equals Pearson. Love it when things work out that way. So we have Pearson selected, and you'll see we have arrays 1, comma, and then array 2 here. So this is, Excel is telling us, all right, if you want me to calculate Pearson's R for you, you need to do it this way. You need to select your first array, also known as the values of our variable. So for this particular correlation, we are finding self-esteem and impulsiveness. So let's start with self-esteem. Why not? So we're going to select the values, the array 1. Then you'll see that Excel has the array 1 bolded, but now we need a comma between them. It is absolutely imperative that you include that comma. Otherwise, Excel's just going to think all the values that you select still belong to self-esteem, or again, whatever your first variable is. You need to have a comma there to separate your variables so Excel knows, hey, you need to include the values for 2 quantitative variables. You only have 1. If you don't include that comma, Excel's going to be like, error, I don't know what's going on. You'll know that you're doing it correctly if you see the values that you've selected are 2 different colors. You'll see my first variable, self-esteem, those values are all blue. Put a comma down, and then I selected my second variable, impulsiveness, and you'll see that those values are all red. So boom. All right, hit enter, and there is my Pearson's R. So I'm not going to do all of them because you guys got to do something around here. But that is how you calculate Pearson's R. Make sure you start with those composite scores, and then you get into just equals Pearson and selecting the values that you just calculated, separated by a comma for each different variable. Okay. So the next thing, after you've computed all of those Pearson's R values, then you'll be computing the linear regression equation. Now, excuse me, there's a really easy way to do that in Excel, and it's essentially just creating a scatter plot and clicking some extra buttons. But let me show you how to do that exactly. Because we will be using these same composite score columns to do this, to create these scatter plots. However, when it comes to that, you will need to have, you want to do all of the scatter plots, format them the way that I am going to show you. That means getting it set up to create the scatter plot. So you'll want to follow the steps I'm going to do exactly. So let's see, what is it that we even need to find our scatter plot for? Oh, look at that, self-esteem and resilience, ICSR, moving down to, here, I'll kind of follow along with us so we're not all over the place. So again, we've computed all the Pearson's R, so just make sure you type in those values you got for Pearson's R in the table, and then let me know which variable pair has the strongest correlation. Now we're going to move on to the linear regression equation. So you'll see the first one is self-esteem and ICSR. So hey, let's do that one. Again, I'll show you the first one. and then you guys will be completing the other two on your own. But we are doing this for, oh crap, I just forgot. Okay, self-esteem and resilience. So let's do self-esteem and resilience. So again, we're going to want to create a scatter plot. And to make things easier on us, it's easier to create the scatter plot when our two columns, when our two variables are side by side. You see that self-esteem and the resilience score, the resilience is not. So I'm going to select my, I'm going to select my self-esteem column, and I'm going to do copy. I just did Control C. Now I want to paste it, but I don't want to just do Control V, because the way that Excel works is that it will change the values if I just do straight up Control V. Because we did the composite scores where we selected the values in self-esteem 1 through 5, it's the location that Excel is finding the average for. So if this is where my self-esteem questions are, and then I just copy and paste my composite score over, the composite scores that Excel is calculating is going to shift in my copied column as well. We don't want that. Watch. I'll show you where this is a problem. So we'll see the first, self-esteem score 3.8, 3.8, 2.6. Okay, those were all correct. When I hit copy, it changes those values completely. Now we have 3, 4.6, 2.6. What the hell? What happened here? That's not what I wanted. It's because it shifted over what the averages are now. Again, Excel is doing it based on the location of the cells we selected. So we don't want that, Excel. So there's a way to avoid that, of course. So I'm just going to get rid of this column because that's incorrect. So instead of just doing a blind copy and then just a blind paste, well, you can do a blind copy. Copy's not going to be weird about it. But instead of just doing Control V and moving forward, you'll want to right click and go to these paste options. And you're going to want to go to the one that has 1, 2, 3, or just the paste the values. So now instead of copying the location of where these composite scores are for self-esteem, now we're just telling Excel, no, not the location. I just want the numbers that are in that column. That's it. Paste options and paste the values will give us that. So do that, and I'm going to do that again for resilience, since that is what we are creating the scatter plot for. So I copied my resilience scores. I'm going over to paste the values option when I right click on the cell, and now boom, bam, we have our two variables that we want to find the linear regression equation for side by side. So from here, it's pretty straightforward. We just select both columns, both self-esteem and resilience, and then we are going to insert our scatter plot. So it's important to note, before I move any further, it's important to note that for our linear regression, we know that our two variables are labeled X and Y. Our predictor is X, which in this case is self-esteem, and our resilience is Y, which is known as our criterion variable. That is our Y. That is the value being predicted, while X is the value that is doing the predicting. We plug that into the linear regression equation to find Y. Now, if you're thinking, wow, okay, so our scatter plot's done, but how do we know which one is X, like which values are on the X axis and which values are on the Y axis? I don't know here. We just kind of, they're both using the same scale, 1 through 5. So I'm not really sure which is which. Well, it's important to note that whenever you are creating linear or whenever you're creating scatter plots and you put the columns side by side, like I've done here with self-esteem and resilience, the column that when you select all the values, again, our values are selected. These are the ones that are in our scatter plot. The column on the left is always going to be your x-axis, and the column on the right will always be your y-axis. So just for the sake of simplicity, can you please go away? Thank you very much. For the sake of simplicity and keeping it, labeled so we know it is what we're looking at, I'm going to label these. So that way we know, all right, the column on the left was self-esteem and the column on the right was resilience. Okay. So there we go. Now we can start finding the linear regression equation. So to do that, we're going to go to add chart elements and add a trend line, the line of best fit here. If this little green check mark doesn't, or green plus sign doesn't show up on yours, you can also just click, select your scatter plot, go to chart design, and then you'll go over here to the far left where it says add chart element, and you can add your trend line here as well. It'll be linear. Okay. So from there, I'm going to click that trend line and you'll see that it's selected by having these two little dots on the bookends of it. So once I have it selected, I'm going to double click it and it's going to bring up these options over here. Format the trend line. Awesome. Wonderful. This is what we want. So we're going to scroll down to the bottom and there's this little guy here that says display equation on the chart. That is what we need. And it always drives me bonkers. Excel always puts the linear regression equation in the worst possible place. So I just move it out of there just so I can see it. All we really need is the linear regression equation itself. I'm not asking you to include your scatter plot. I just want you to get the linear regression equation. And it's really easy to do, a lot faster than doing it by hand when we use Excel and format a scatter plot and have Excel tell us what that is. But that's it. So we have our linear regression equation now. So now we can go back to our document, our activity 9, and then you just type in what that linear regression equation was, and be sure to do that for impulsiveness and resilience and sensation seeking and resilience as well. So you'll be creating 3 separate scatter plots. And again, make sure that whatever the X variable is, self-esteem, impulsiveness, sensation seeking, when you create that scatter plot, that X column, whatever variable X is labeled as, again, impulsiveness or sensation seeking, that always needs to be on the left and resilience will always be on the right. Also make sure that when you copy and paste the values over, to kind of move it over so they're side by side, it makes inserting the scatter plot a lot easier. Make sure that you are copying is fine. You can just do Control-C or whatever your shortcut would be. And you'll want to, instead of just Control-V, done, okay, let's move forward, make sure that you select the paste values option. Like I showed you just not too long ago, it's going to really screw up your data and give you incorrect linear regression equations if you just do a straight paste, because Excel is pasting the location of the averages, not the actual numbers of the averages themselves. So that's it. I also have a little description here. This is pretty much just this is just describing what I just did, what I just showed you all. But in case written instructions help you, I have that there as well. And also, like I said, you can better answer these questions by referring to the linear regression PowerPoint. That the last couple slides tells you how to interpret findings such as these. But that's it. That is our activity 9. So as per usual, it'll be due the following Monday. Also, next Friday, so a week from today, December 1st. So on December 8th, we will have our final exam review. Our final exam, I'll go over it more as we get closer to, well, I'll go over this again when we have our final exam review day, but our final exam will be posted during final exam week. You will have from the Monday of finals to the last day of finals, Thursday, to complete the exam, other than just having additional time, because our first 2 exams had about 2 days. But other than just having that additional time, the final exam is pretty much identical in terms of structure to our previous 2 exams. The final exam will be cumulative, so it is going to cover topics that we've covered over the course of the semester. But it'll still be 50 multiple choice questions, and you'll still have an hour and 50 minutes to complete your 1 attempt. Of course, you'll have additional time of, you'll have more than an hour and 50 minutes if you have accommodations that require you to have that. However, that's all I have for today. So I will see you all next week and have a good rest of your day. Yeah.